A very good afternoon, molweni, absheni, goeiemiddag. That is about all that I know of languages, but not too bad. That's 3. And good afternoon and welcome to the Nelson Mandela University launch of the webinar of books of Virus Fighters and a beautiful conversation on multilingualism. This event is a celebration of International Mother Tongue Day that took place on the 21st of February. This year is an interesting theme called Fostering Multilingualism for Inclusion in Education and Society. I'm particularly myself excited. I'm sure all of you that have logged in are equally excited when I'm going to tell you that this year we are so excited and extremely honored to be sharing a platform with world-renowned storyteller and a treasure and gem to our language and our country, Dr. Mhlophe, who will be gracing us with a performance and sharing her own views on multilingualism and mother tongue. I grew up listening to her, and I guess my passion and love, especially for Xhosa, came from her storytelling. So I can't wait to go back and be a child again and sit back and listen to another beautifully narrated story that's going to come from her. So, in conjunction with the Faculty of Humanities, the School of Language and Literature and Department of Applied Languages, a series of short language lessons, isiXhosa, isiZulu, French and Afrikaans, and a multilingual poetry offered titled Moments in a Mother Tongue have been released throughout the week and will be available on the university website. So this is just a breakdown of how the program is going to run. The program for this discussion will be as follows. Each panel member will hand over to the next speaker so that you prompt them for them to speak. Alga Williams from Nelson Mandela University Communications, Marketing, Arts and Culture and Heritage will then introduce the project, share a video adaptations of the book. She'll then hand over to Nikki Rapen from NMU Communications and Marketing, Arts and Culture, who will then talk into the production process, consultation with different stakeholders, and creating transformative communication tools. So my job is done. I will now gladly hand over to Alga to take us further and do her presentation. Alga, the stage is yours.
Thanks very much, Narato, and thank you so much for having me join this very, very exciting initiative. I'm so excited to join and to talk about these very important topics today. Welkom ook aan almal wat vandag aanlyn ingeskakel is. Ons sien uit na wonderlike en kleurvolle stories in verskeie tale. So as Lerato said, my name is Eula Williams and I joined the Arts, Culture and Heritage in Communication and Marketing team of the university in 2020. And in my capacity as a composer, a music producer, musician, an author, and also as a creator of digital arts content. So the digital children's book series Virus Fighters was conceived in 2020 as an extension of the university's wider COVID-19 communications around changing social behaviors and staying safe during the pandemic, and also as part of the university's #MaskUpMandela campaign. The university's Irona Times cartoon series, which has been published online for several months now in isiXhosa, Afrikaans and English, has been a highly successful initiative in reaching the student community of the university and educating them about COVID-19 safety. Similarly, a #MaskUpMandela poster campaign and other interventions have also been rolled out to reach various communities. Now, mother tongue education has been encouraged by UNESCO since the 1950s, and countless studies have already proved just how important it is. Now more than ever, during this unprecedented time of COVID-19, it's vital that children have access to this important information in a way that they can understand it and in a way that they can relate to. So to this end, last year, Arts, Culture and Heritage identified a gap in the targeted audiences, namely that of young children between the ages of 5 and 10. And it was very important for the university to share critical pandemic-related information in a way that's accessible and relatable for young children. and also moreover to make it available as a free online resource, a free low data digital resource. With the recent resurgence of COVID-19 and the very likely possibility that we're facing of future waves, releasing virus fighters now, when most children are returning to school, is very relevant. And it's very important to reinforce these basic steps of behavior, wearing a mask, physical distancing, and staying at home. So this particular series has 10 episodes of virus fighters, which then was conceptualized to fall under a wider umbrella series of children's digital books called Super Kids Stay Safe. So under this umbrella, the possibility for future children's books exists. For example, creating series around other important social messages such as road safety or bullying, mental health, etc., etc. So Virus Fighters is really the first series that falls under Super Kids Stay Safe, which has this very, very specific target audience of young children in preschool and lower primary school. So as a team, the division devised the script, like I said, for 10 episodes, and then commissioned wonderful, colorful illustrations, and moreover, engaging various consultants from the fields of psychology and education to make sure that the tone, the content was all age appropriate and as effective as we possibly could. The characters in the books and the background scenery of the episodes were carefully created to be diverse and as representative as possible, and to have a very distinct South African landscape and clothing worn by the characters to distinguish it from, and this was very important, to distinguish it from similar initiatives in the global north, for example. So something that children in South Africa and on the wider continent of Africa could then relate to. We've also took a superhero approach to, as you will see later when we view a sample, where the little children are portrayed as superheroes fighting the virus, hence the title Virus Fighters, providing children with a little bit of a feeling of empowerment in a fun, sort of exciting way. Excuse me, during a time when even grown-ups feel quite overwhelmed and not in control of their surroundings and of their feelings and of their environment. So the superhero approach was very specifically chosen for that. It was also important to create this pilot series in the 3 official Eastern Cape languages, isiXhosa, English and Afrikaans. And in addition, we then added translations in French to reach the African Francophone countries and engaged with the University of Dar es Salaam towards creating a Kiswahili version of it as well. So the goal after this pilot series is released in the 5 languages is then eventually to include the remaining official languages of South Africa as well. So in addition to the age-appropriate visuals and the simple, relatable stories, we created music to accompany this series. Now, that is specifically where my role was in this project. Music has long been used very successfully as a vehicle for sharing information with children and in educational material through things like repetition, simple lyrics and catchy melodies. So if I can say in Afrikaans as well, kinders leer deur liedjies en rympies. Almal ken die impak, almal kan die impak van liedjies uit hulle kinderdae onthou. En lirieke bly vir dekades in jou geheue, al kan ons nie die spesifieke konteks of die gebeure onthou waarmee dit saamgegaan het nie. So in other words, we remember melodies, we remember lyrics for many, many decades, long after the memory of the context has faded. So for this particular series, I created a musical jingle called Mask Up Mandela, with very easy music and lyrics written in a distinctly South African idiom. And what I mean by that is combining voices, traditional African instruments like the kalimba, the marimba, and percussion instruments, and then also elements of iconic South African music styles like South African styles like kwela and gqom. It's easily singable and it's very easy to memorize. And those are very important aspects when you're creating music for a very young audience. So for this pilot series, the song was produced and sung in English only to be used with subtitles in the translated versions, but the music itself lends itself to future translations, which could then be adapted by incorporating specific cultural elements from the various regions, both here in South Africa and in other African countries. So that is it from my side. I'm going to hand over to my colleague, another member of the creative team for Virus Fighters, Ms. Nikki Rapin. Go ahead, Nikki.
Thank you so much, Yula. And sawubona, goeiemiddag, bonjour, and hello to everybody, all of our esteemed audience members and guests joining us today for this exciting webinar. My name is Nikki Ann Rapin, and I am from the Department of Arts, Culture and Heritage, headed up by Mr. Ryan Pillay, that is located within the Department of Communication and Marketing, headed up by our Chantal Janica. I'm so excited to be here sharing with you this exciting project today. And I'd like to tell you a little bit more about what inspired it. And I think a major point of inspiration for us came from our namesake, Mr. Nelson Mandela, who once said that if you talk to a man in a language he understands, that goes to his head. But if you talk to him in his language, that goes to his heart. So even though we were only able to have this particular pilot of the series in 5 languages, we really hope and look forward to being able to have having it available in even more and all South African languages in the future series, as Yula mentioned. So another major impetus for this particular publication it came from the impacts on social behaviors on young people, that they're so young, they already have to learn how to interact with this world, and then suddenly COVID came and they had to relearn new social interactions suddenly thrust upon them in the schooling environments being so directly affected by COVID-19, from mask wearing, excessive sanitizing, temperature taking, all these things as these new normals, ways of life, that they've all had to adapt to so fast. The toll and the shock to their systems has also been impacted. So in addition to the aforementioned, the way that they interact with their friends and teachers, being able to just touch each other, or their teachers being able to comfort them if needed, it's all been affected. And part of the inspiration of the project was to also aid this particular group of human development with adjusting to these new social behaviors around the virus. And of course, we also are excited about the fact that this particular series can be used as an educational resource of content by educators as a reference point that comes in these wonderful, in an artistic packaging and offering. And that takes me to my next point. And that is the value of artistic approaches to education, which I'd just like to touch on as well. So these stories have purposefully been placed in vibrant visual formats to aid the transmission of these important messages to young minds. And by utilizing artistic methods with the transmission of these messages, with relatable, colorful characters in settings that are also familiar to them, it translates more easily into their minds so that it can be more easily practically implemented in their lives as well. So in addition to the visual aspect, there's also the oral sensory activation that is activated through the use of music, which Yula touched on and spoke a little bit about earlier as well. And, you know, when it comes to the value of arts and the power of arts in education, there are countless theories to back up the power of the arts when transmitting educational messages as well. And then in terms of us getting this particular resource out there, which, as I mentioned, is completely free. We have distribution hopes, so we really would like to work with the Department of Education, both locally and nationally, to try and get this resource out as far and wide as possible, especially, as I mentioned, to the lower income areas. And that as well through our partnership, which came about through the translation contact with Prof. Alden Mutembai at the University of Dar es Salaam. And he's also very excited to spread the Kiswahili version as far and wide as possible. So we'll be working with media houses, radio houses to try and get this resource out as far as possible as well. So I think that we are now coming to one of the major reasons that we have gathered here today, and that, of course, is to premiere just a couple of episodes with the time that is allowed to us of Virus Fighters, the first series in Super Kids Stay Safe. So if the technical team is ready, without further ado, we would like to present our 2 episodes that we have chosen that we're going to premiere for you today in English and Afrikaans. So without further ado, I give you Virus Fighters. Thank you.
Apologies, everybody. I do believe that we're not getting audio. Am I correct? Apologies. I think possibly for the sake of continuity, I wonder if whilst this is sorted out behind the scenes, if we shouldn't perhaps move on to the next speaker. What do you think, Lerato?
Perfect. I think let's move on to the next speaker. Perhaps her bio is quite long, so maybe as I do the bio. So that helps us to have a good long bio. So I'll read it very slowly, and then as we do that, but technical glitches are obviously always something that's expected. We live in a digital age, but these things happen. But I'm sure that our team is going to fix it as soon as possible. So what I really love, just to reflect back on what Nikki and both you and her said, Eula, was the issue where you guys talked about music. And when you mentioned Boom, automatically I was like, yay, because if you go to the township now and you sing any kwaito song, you'd be so surprised that kids in the township are able to fully sing an entire Boom song and know all the lyrics. And then you take them to the books and it's the total opposite. So it just shows that music literally is a universal language. And the moment you make words and music and you incorporate that into a book, you've got such a winning formula. And then you add superheroes. I mean, which child doesn't want to be like Superman or Batman or the Hulk? So I really loved how you guys used all those 3 elements. I'm a mother to a young child who's only 3 and hates wearing a mask. So when I saw those videos and I saw that my mom is a superhero and my grand made this for me, I realized just how you guys have literally hit on the nail. Music, colors, making them feel like they are part of this change they bring into the country by wearing the mask. You guys have done such a superb job. So kudos to you for the creativity, the hard work that you guys have invested in making sure that this Virus Fighters book is a success. And I'm sure that many young people will also thank you like I have now. So let's go now to our lady of the moment, who's going to be our next speaker. Her name is Dr. Renam Sope. She hails from Hammersdale in KZN. She is an author, a poet, playwright, director, performer, and of course, a storyteller. Influenced by her grandmother's tales when she was a child, Mhlope's written and performance talent has transported her from South Africa to South and North America, Europe, Greenland, and Japan. She has performed her story in Royal Albert Hall and the Kennedy Center and has collaborated with Ladysmith Black Mambazo on the Truant CD. She has won awards, including the Sony Award for Radio Drama from BBC Africa, the Fringe First Award in Edinburgh Festival, and an Obie Award in New York. This part just blew me away. She holds not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 7 honorary doctorates from universities across South Africa and the UK. For the past 20 years, Dr. Mhlophe has worked tirelessly running Nozincwadi, Mother of Books Literacy campaign, and in 2012, Mzansi Magic TV awarded her the National Icon Award. She is the director of Gcinamasiko Art and Culture Trust. She is one of SA's 21 icons, with the likes of Lillian Cingo, Bishop Tutu, Nadine Gordimer, and Nelson Mandela. In 2015, she recorded 2 CDs towards raising funds for Kumbulani Memory House, and in 2017, she received the CEO Global Lifetime Achievement Award, which is awarded to Africa's most influential women in business and government. Dr. Mhlophe continues to perform and create while working towards a brighter future for the children of South Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, I think her resume speaks for herself. I don't know if you're excited as I am. Pity I don't have any popcorn around me, but I'm excited to hear exactly what she's going to share with us. Dr. Mhlophe, the floor is absolutely yours.
Sanbonani, Sanbonani, Sanbonani. It's a great honor to be amongst you and also to share this platform when we are launching such a really precious book. It is going to be seen by so many people as well because of the animation. Animation is one of my favorite ways of carrying messages. When we were children, we didn't have television. We listened to stories. We sat around the fire, and now children come to the television. They watch animation and they hear stories told in different art forms. Why do I greet you by saying Sanbonani? Sawubona simply means it is good to see you. The spirit in me honors the spirit in you. If I'm in Japan, or I'm in Singapore, or I'm in Argentina, or I'm in Greenland, I've been to Greenland, hello, taking South African culture. I've been to Canada, I've been to Kenya, I have been to Zambia, to Senegal, to Egypt. Everywhere I go, when I greet people, I say Sawubona. Sawubona being the most connected to my heart way of greeting. And we say Dumelang, we say Absheni, we say, we try different languages, all of these ways of greeting. It is something of recognizing someone else, that I see you, I honor you. And it's something that must never be left, no matter how much of the technology we prefer to embrace. We must never stop honoring one another's presence, letting our spirits connect with each other. As a storyteller, if you asked me as a child, what would I want to be? I had all kinds of wanting to be this and I want to be that. And the first thing I was clear about, I was going to be a teacher. My teacher, my first year teacher, that's grade 1, Miss Lamini, that was that. She just converted me. I was converted, I was going to become a teacher. And over the years, as I grew, then I fell in love with languages. And falling in love with languages led me to loving poetry and hearing and reading the poetry of a great man, S.E.K. Nkai, when I was at high school. I just thought, whoa, writing, that's it. I'm with it. And things kept changing, and I always thought of myself in future becoming a writer. That did not change in the sense that I will never be able to live without being a writer. But I didn't see myself as a performer. I always saw myself as a writer. And if I had had money to go to university when I finished my high school, I would have just gone straight into linguistics. I would have been a linguist by now. All kinds of detours happened in my life, and I'm so grateful for those detours because I ended up reading news on radio for BBC Africa. I ended up reading for Radio Netherlands. I was reading news, and I learned a lot about how to use my voice. Another thing is that I started performing on stage. I found myself on a professional stage. Many biographies online, they say I've been doing this work for the past 20 years. I don't know how you count 20 years since 1982. I've been in this line of work since 1982. It's been a journey, and I'm so grateful about the generosity of the people I have worked with. And telling stories found me along the way. There's an expression I used to say to my director, who was my mentor as well, Babu Bani Simon. I always said to him, yes, I'm flying with crooked wings. And he said, but the audience loves you. I said, yes, they love me, but I'm flying with crooked wings. And I'm so glad he didn't force me to properly unpack. That's what clever people say these days. Unpack that. He didn't force me to do that, but I knew that there was a certain sense of not belonging, even though I was doing so well in the theater world, which I will always be grateful for, because I learned to express myself in a particular way and being able to interact with my audience. But then I went into full-time storytelling. I straightened up. I began to fly right. When I fly right and I'm telling stories, it doesn't matter whether I'm telling stories in isiXhosa, isiZulu, in English, or I'm putting a little bit of Sesotho here and there. I find myself loving languages because storytellers are language lovers. Given, doesn't matter what part of the world they come from, storytellers are language lovers. So I also find myself I found myself reaching another place where the valve in my heart that I didn't know was there started opening, and I created so much music ever since I became a full-time storyteller. All my CDs, storytelling and musical, they've always meant that I have music in my life. I have music in my life, and I'm grateful for that because I'm able to interact with people. I remember arriving in Germany during the 2006 World Cup, performing there to invite people to come to the 2010 World Cup in South Africa. And we got onto the stage and we started singing, Sanibonani, Sanibonani, Siyanibingelela, zihlobo zethu, Sanibonani, Sanibonani, Siyanibingelela, zihlobo zethu singena ngomoya umoya wothando sigcwele intokomalo ezinhlizweni zethu nabasele emakhaya bayanibingelela zihlobo zethu. We saw the audience surging forward because we were greeting them in a particular way. They didn't even know what is Sawubona or Sanibonani, but something spoke to them. That's the magic of music. And then with the storytelling, people suddenly, they were there for you. It's like you'd lay down the grass mat, and then you ask them to sit down. And as soon as you said, "Kwesukela," or uthi kwathi ke kaloku ngantsomi, and people who speak Sesotho bari ineri nuka itletsi metsi, and if they speak Chivenda bari salungano bari salungano. You see, and the different languages of starting a story. And so when I tell a story from the very depths of my heart. And because I love a story, when I tell it, I want it to be infectious. I want other people to see. I want to take them with the minds of the eyes. So I will tell a story right now. But this one is very contemporary. This story is old. It happened not so long ago. It is about a woman, Mrs. Zwane. She lived in a village called Edududu. It is a village up on a hill overlooking the beautiful Indian Ocean. And she loved standing in her garden, watching the waves coming in and out, coming in and out. And she listened to the sound. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. She loved that ocean, how it changed the colors according to the weather, how it kissed the sun, and how the blue sky was reflected on the quiet waters of the Indian Ocean. And on stormy days, it was a different ocean. When it had been raining, the different rivers had been running, gurgling, all the way to the welcoming arms of the ocean. She saw all of that and she loved it. Also, Mrs. Zwane, she worked in her garden planting different vegetables, and once a month she took some of those vegetables, put them in a big basket. She dressed beautifully and she went to the market to sell them. Sometimes the big mango tree yielded delicious mangoes. I don't know how much you love mango, but me, oh, when it is mango season, I think maybe this government is not so bad after all. The mangoes are not banned. So I go mad. I love mangoes. And so she would take the mangoes and wash them, polish them, put them in her basket and cover them with a beautiful cloth. And she would go to the market to sell them. And so Mrs. Zwane enjoyed life in general. Another thing, she was very unusual because of the other women who looked at her. And so she was collecting anything with words. Anything with words. She'd take old books and she would get books from whoever and she would put them in her bedroom, pile them up. And her neighbors said, "What is wrong with you? What are you doing with all of these books? You can't read? You can't write?" She said, "I think these books have got magic. I think there's magic in those words. One day, those words, those voices will speak to me." They thought she was very strange. Sometimes they met her going to fetch water at the river. They said, "Nkosikazi, don't you think it would be better to work with us, to do some bead work? Look at how beautiful our beads are. Or make baskets, the beautiful baskets we weave, or the grass mats." She said, "Of course, I love all of that. I know beads and baskets are good, but so are books." They continued thinking she was strange. But they gave her a new name. They called her Nozincwadi, mother of books. She loved that name. Every time somebody called her Nozincwadi, she perked up. She smiled and responded with a big smile. She always encouraged the children in her village to go to school, to listen hard to everything the teachers were teaching them, because there's magic in those words. There's something about those books. They tried to listen to her. Yes, Mama Nozincwadi. One day, a boy called Muzi had lost a very important book that he needed to have at school. And he came home very, very sad because his parents didn't have the money to buy the book. And his father didn't have a job anymore. He had lost his job. And he was really devastated. But Mama Nozincwadi heard about it. Mrs. Zwane went to the family of Muzi and sat down politely and said, "Please do not worry. Tomorrow I can go with Muzi to town to buy him the book that he needs." She had been putting money aside. She doesn't have many expenses. She doesn't have any children. So the parents allowed Muzi to travel with Mama Nozincwadi on the bus and go to town, and they bought the book that he needed. Several times it was heard that she had helped yet another child. This continued, and they said, "Whoa, Mama Nozincwadi, you are something. You are a good neighbor indeed." Another time, children were talking, coming back from school, and they were saying, "I wish I knew what to do for Mama Nozincwadi. A gift, something to thank her for buying that book for me." Muzi smiled knowingly. He thought he had an idea. That afternoon, he took the book that Mama Nozincwadi had bought for her, and he went to Mama Nozincwadi's home and sat down. "Sawubona, Mama Nozincwadi." She greeted, "Yes, sawubona ndodana. Please, Mama, I've come to thank you for buying the book for me." "Oh, that's easy. How to thank me? You go to school, listen hard, study hard, and grow up to be somebody. That's how you thank me and your parents who struggle to send you to school." Muzi said, "Yes, Mama, I am studying very hard. I do everything you've just said, but I also want to read the book for you, the book that you gave me, because you can't read." "Really?" Mama Nozincwadi sat down. Muzi took the book and read it for her. She sat there, looking at the distance, listening to Muzi reading the book about a woman who fell in love with water. It was called Water in Our World, where water comes from. How in the big rains, the water gurgles down on the hills and the mountains and joins little rivers and bigger rivers and goes to the ocean. All of those things. And she listened and listened, and she was so grateful. That's what you learn at school. What else do the teachers teach you? Oh, they teach us mathematics and science They teach us geography. We learn so much about the world we are living in. Mama Nozincwadi was pleased. But Muzi said, Mama, I'm not finished. I want to request that you go and speak to our principal. There is now an adult learning center at our school. Maybe you can go and learn to read and write. Mama Nozincwadi didn't believe it. What? Me going to school? I never set foot in school. How? I mean, really, even my mind, I think my mind is rusted. I wouldn't be able to read anything, to learn anything. But Muzi insisted until Mama Nozincwadi thought he would try. She would try. She lay in bed one night. She heard all the books in her bedroom calling her, Nozincwadi, mother of books, Nozincwadi. So she woke up the next morning, had her breakfast and showered and got dressed, took her handbag and went to meet the principal. And it was true. It was true what Muzi had said. There was an adult learning center at the school, Uqiko High School. And so Mama Nozincwadi was one of the first adult learners who went to join the evening classes. And Mama Nozincwadi learned bit by bit. She could write her own name. She could read a few words. She was recognizing words all over the place. She was so happy. And the principal, inspired by her enthusiasm, wrote outside, Funda ukhule no Nozincwadi, read and grow with Nozincwadi, and more people came to join. This story, I wrote it in 2001 when we started our literacy campaign, Nozincwadi, Mother of Books. Who was Nozincwadi? She was my great-grandmother, Umamchunu. My great-grandmother, she couldn't read or write. She's the one who collected books and old hymn books, old Bibles, torn Ilanga Lasenatala, whatever had words on it, put them in a suitcase. And when I heard about that, I thought, I want to wake up the suitcase. I thought, imagine, I'm not the only crazy one who loves words. There was somebody in my family who loved books. This is good. And so I decided I would take a whole 12 months to go and visit many, many schools. We started fundraising and we partnered with different organizations and we donated books to every single school we visited. And it was 2 years, it was 3 years. And this year, 2021, we are celebrating in April 20 years of the Nozincwadi, Mother of Books literacy campaign. And I think my great-grandmother is rejoicing. Her spirit is going to be with us on that day as we are celebrating World Book Day here in Durban in 2021, April. And reading has meant for us that we encourage not only young people, but teachers and other elders to believe in the spoken word, in the written word, in the power of our languages. Because every province we go to, we make sure that we donate books in a language that is spoken, whether it's Sindebele, whether it's Xitsonga, whether it's Setswana, it's Xhosa, it's Zulu, whether it is Afrikaans that is predominantly in that province. We donate books in all of those languages. And I love languages. And when I see the work, the impact we've had, I think the message that I preach every single time, I say, if a nobody like me can become somebody, so can you be. Because sometimes when you see people who are poor, when you think you've got nothing, sometimes you become despondent. You think nothing will ever be I will never be anybody. Because I'm so poor, I've got nothing. Sometimes I see myself in children who hardly have shoes in their schools, who've got torn shoes, who've got those shirts that have been washed and washed and washed. Even Omo Micro can't do it anymore. But be clean. Be hardworking. Believe that with your hard work and focusing on your education, you are sure going to be somebody. It worked with me, and I know many, many people who come from poor, difficult circumstances who become very, very important role models all over South Africa, the African continent, and the rest of the world. Never, never undermine the importance of speaking your mother tongue, of reading, of choosing your profession. And if it's difficult, fall Dust yourself up and rise. So I celebrate my mother tongue, isiZulu. My own biological mother came from the Eastern Cape. That's why I speak isiXhosa. Ndithetha ngokuzingca isiXhosa. And English, I also have seen it as a medium that transports me to different parts of the world to communicate, and everywhere I go, I share the stories of my people with pride, because I never wish to be like anybody else. I'll always be uNokugcina, uMamhlophe, uZindela, uNkomonhle, uThumbeza kaMyeni, uPhuthaza, abaphuthaza izulu abanye belesaba, ontombi ezenda ngonyezi, ezabafokazana zenda ngomnyama, yithi labo intombi ezalwa umashezi, umkhonto obomvu, ufudo olufakade. Thank you. Thank you so much.
A standing ovation. All we can say is nathi mama siyazinga ngawe, ulikhaya, uligorha, uliproud exesha le abantu abatsha really to you and finally they can look up because you are true inspiration. As you're narrating, I think what really sets you apart from many other storytellers is that whether you're telling a story in English or in Afrikaans or in isiXhosa, but I pictured myself there with the water blowing up and down. You have a really unique way of telling stories, so much so that you're making me feel that I'm a part of that story. So I imagine it in my head that I'm there, I'm that young boy looking at that sign and my grandmother saying this and that to me. So you've really been blessed with such a beautiful, rare gift. And it's so nice to hear that this gift that you have been given, you're not only using it for your own benefit, but you are going, like you've said, through the Nozincwadi literacy campaign. You're going all over the country and people are looking at you, young kids who have no schools, who have no shoes, are looking at you and say, you know what, if Mamhlophe can do it, because like you're saying, you also came from a not so good background, but you told yourself that one day you'll be something. And I love that that is the main message you're sending out, that that young boy from Etsolo, that young boy from Etepe, Nezimpubu will look at you and say, you know what, one day I will do it as well. So thank you so much for the inspiration that you are and continue to be, and may God just give you long life so that my grandkids can also sit back and learn about you in their history. That would be a great pleasure and an honor for them as well. Thank you so much for that. That are so worthwhile and so
siyabulela kakhulu. And South Africa, all the different languages that we speak, they matter. They shouldn't just be in the constitution, they should be lived. This is our living cultures.
Siyabulela mama kakhulu. Let's move on with our program. We've got another speaker. We will now hear from Professor Nokhanyo Mzange, who is from Nelson Mandela University Faculty of Education, who works as an associate professor. Some of her research interests include language, language policy, multilingualism, autism, and autism education. She heads up the university's language policy reference working group, tasked with the goal to provide a multilingual policy that is implementable. With expertise in language education, she serves in the community of practice for the teaching and learning of African languages, a national group of university representatives that focus on language and multilingualism in higher education. Professor Mzanga, the floor is absolutely yours.
Thank you so much, Dirato. Molweni goeiedag, da, tumelang. Good day, colleagues. Thank you so much, Dr. Mhlophe. Ndiyabulela kakhulu ngokuthetha ngokusixelela kwakho, you know, such a sterling performance. Yelibali ubusixelela zilona. I just want to say thanks as well to the Varus Fighters team, Ryan, Nikki, Ula. I mean, ukusebenzisa kwenu ilwimi ezohlukeneyo. It's quite, you know, a good introduction to my talk. So thank you so much. So my brief, colleagues, Ryan made it clear that I must speak for 10 minutes. You know, so what it means then is I will just share some of the ideas that I have with regard to multilingual strategies that I think, you know, we all need to consider and implement if we are really thinking seriously about the theme, of this year's International Mother Tongue Day, which is fostering multilingualism for inclusion in education and society. I believe that our children really deserve to grow in a society that is very inclusive, a society that will embrace diversity and not only acknowledge, but also accept that we all come from different backgrounds. We bring in different cultures, different ways of thinking, different ways of doing things, different languages, and so forth. So what that means to me is that multilingualism then becomes a societal issue. It cannot be only discussed in institutions of higher learning, and we do not talk about multilingualism in our societies and in our community spaces, because we all know there is a saying that, konke kuqala ekhaya. That is, charity begins at home. And even if we talk of education, it becomes, it begins at home. So if we do not include the society in these talks, I think we are missing something, right? So that is the first point that I just want to highlight. Otherwise, we are still going to continue in the next decades and centuries trying to argue for the positioning of African languages, because the communities that we live in and the society that our children are growing in, do not really get a sense or an opportunity to engage into why it is important that everybody could function in more than one language, because that is what multilingualism actually entails. So that is the first point that I would like us to think about. And maybe if there is an opportunity, not only today, but throughout the year, we need to interrogate as to why if you agree with me that multilingualism is a societal issue, then how do we make it happen? How do we then, envisage a society and a country where everybody, each and every individual, actually believes that it is their responsibility as individuals to ensure that they can function in this diverse society, right? And then when we come to the workplaces, for instance, our workplaces, I'm not only talking about the university, all the workplaces in our country, if we talk of the schools in our country, even in Africa in general, you talk of the social media and all of these spaces, because that is where we interact and we engage with one another. How then do we promote a particular language instead of educating the society that as we are all contributing on Facebook, on Twitter, or on radio, on TV, all of these languages are very important. But then on a practical level, I just want to bring in the question of the language policy, because I want to believe that even in the workplaces, even at the university and so forth, it becomes a very important factor. So if then we consider multilingualism as a societal issue, in my view, it means even in the workspaces, it might be a private workspace, it might be a government space. Everybody then will be concerned when they look into their language policies that govern that particular space and realize that they do not speak to inclusivity and they do not speak to diversity. You see, so this is the point that I'm trying to build, to say, maybe before we can even think further, let us engage the community. This cannot be a university issue. It cannot be a school issue. It cannot be a learning and a teaching issue. It is a societal issue. So that is the second point that I'd like us to discuss as we move forward, because I think in my 10 minutes, I can just share the ideas and then, we can discuss them. And then the third aspect, Now coming directly to the university, I think we all know that education is linked to knowledge, and language is used to access knowledge. And many times we have asked the question, whose language is used in education? Whose language is used to access knowledge? And whatever answers we have right now, what does it mean then if we are thinking of a multilingual society? Because there's something wrong with the answer that we know. There's something wrong with the current reality as it is now. So for me, we cannot talk about language without talking about knowledge. Because as you were listening to Dr. Mhlophe telling the story, I mean, from that story, although it was told in English, but I could pick up some of the things that I could relate to that speak to my experiences as an African child growing in the same context. From that story, I could pick up, the cultural connotations. But take note, the story was told in English, but then as a speaker of isiXhosa, and I'm sure Ula as well, as an African speaking person, and everybody else who's listening can identify with those aspects, in that particular story. And that story is embedded with a lot of knowledge. Now, hence, I'm raising the relationship between language and knowledge. And therefore, the concept of multilingualism suggests that knowledges, not knowledge, should be accessed in multiple languages. Because it's quite interesting right now, if you type on the computer knowledges, it underlines it red because we are not yet there. But if you type knowledge, then that is a correct spelling. So for me, it goes beyond, the spelling issue. It shows that there is still a long way to go, so that even in the language of the internet, because I noticed during lockdown, for instance, in 2020, that the language of the internet is not my language. The language of the internet does not recognize, what I want to express. And yet, we are in a multilingual society. So that is quite, something that we really need to talk about. And the fourth point is around the concept itself. Maybe, colleagues, it's time that we redefine and be more specific about what we mean by multilingualism, instead of just saying it is the ability to speak more than one language or the ability to function, in more than one language. Maybe we should need to be more specific and say that for our context, in a South African context, or if you go beyond, South Africa to Africa as well, then we mention and we make it clear that when we talk about multilingualism, we are talking of an African language, whatever African language is, depending on the context. We're talking of English. In our context, we're talking of Afrikaans. We're talking of sign language and other languages that are used by children with neurological or cognitive developmental challenges. Because sometimes I feel that as much as we recognize this diversity, there is a section of the population that we ourselves, who are talking about multilingualism, exclude. Those are the children or individuals with special needs who communicate in a particular language, So hence I'm saying that we need to redefine the term and be very specific in terms of what we mean, instead of just saying generally the ability to speak more than one language. What are we talking about? Let us be clear and position ourselves and say, in a South African context, if you're talking of multilingualism, then you mean an African language, English, Afrikaans, sign language, and any other language that is suitable for children with neurological, or cognitive developmental challenges. Then as a society, we will be able then to work towards, recognizing and living in a space that actually functions multilingually. So hence, I do believe that in a society where knowledge is, not one knowledge, where languages, where cultures, where people would coexist and dialogue with each other, then that would be an ideal multilingual, society. The same applies to a curriculum that coexists, with other knowledges. That will be a curriculum that will prepare a teacher who is going to go and teach in schools, a curriculum that will prepare an engineer that will be working with people in the community, a curriculum that will prepare a doctor, a scientist, an accountant, or anyone, in the institution who is going to go back to the community and serve in that community. Because if you look at how we do things, you ask yourself, why is it that multilingualism is not a graduate attribute of each student in our university, in South Africa, and in Africa in general? For example, for Nelson Mandela, in our vision, we claim to be an African university. How do we claim to be an African university when an African language does not even play a role in the functioning, in the curriculum, in the teaching, in everything that we do? Then those are the questions that we should be reflecting on if we want to be supporting the whole ideal of multilingualism. Because for me, people should be able to greet one another in at least all of those different forms. Is it difficult to do? And what about the text, the literature, the music, the art, and all of that? Is it not possible for all of that to reflect this multilingual, cultural, I add the multi-knowledge, society? And I know that colleagues in languages, they speak of trans-knowledging. Why can't we be talking of trans-knowledging, in the same breath as trans-languaging or multilingualism? Because we already see this, it's already happening, colleagues, in architecture. If you look at architectural practices, you look at arts, in religious forms, intercontinental cuisines, you can see this trans-knowledging. You can see this knowledging, multi-practices, and so forth. So, so for me, colleagues, in the few minutes that I'm given, I just want to conclude and say, even as parents, we shouldn't be ashamed to tell our children that it is okay to be different. It is okay to speak your language, even if you are in a school where your language is invisible. Hence, in our homes, we should be speaking in our languages. We should be exposing our children to all of this, print material that is in African languages as well. Because you will be surprised, if I can tell you, I was approached by a school somewhere here in Port Elizabeth to go and teach children at a creche, 4-year-olds, isiXhosa, before lockdown. Every Wednesday I was in that school, teaching African-speaking children isiXhosa because their African-speaking parents realized the importance of a multilingual society. You see? So those are some of the things that are happening in our society. And therefore, if we are recognizing and celebrating this theme of fostering multilingualism for inclusion in education and society, I think we need to own the concept. Thank you so much. I hand over to
you so much. Thank you so much, Professor Nokhanyo. Really appreciate that. I think so many important pointers coming from that. I think Ryan, Nikki, and Yula, we need to have a 2-hour session. There's so much to unpack. So much of what she said really hit home with me, especially with someone that works with schools, and you speak to young people and you ask them to answer a question gets close and they can't even do one sentence, and they're not ashamed of that because they're like, I'm in an English medium school, so I don't want to speak my language, and that's okay. So there's so many pointers that she raised that it mustn't just be about being able to greet or to say hi, but there must be conversations in different languages. It must be found in our literature, it must be found in our knowledge, it must be found in the social media space. So there's still so much more that I feel Dr. Nokhanyo has to offer us. and her discussions. We still need to unpack so much more because it really is a sensitive, not so sensitive topic, but one that really needs more time to unpack. But thank you so much for that. I think you've given us all food for thought. We're going to go back now, reflect in our homes, and try and see what part we can play in trying to create the real multilingualism society, not just by word of mouth. I'm going to go to the vote of thanks. Because we have to play this video. I want to see that animation and those songs. So just a vote of thanks. First of all, thank you so much to all the panel members. Dr. Klope, thank you so much. Thank you so much to Nikki, Yula, to Professor Nokanyo. Thank you so much for being part of this team. Behind the scenes, thank you so much to Thomas. Thank you to Ryan and everyone else who's been part of making sure that this webinar is a success. All the collaborations from Faculty of Humanities and Language Lectures, Ms. Nobuntu Ntantiso, Mr. Simpiwe Yende, Mrs. Michelle Davet, Mr. Alan Murdoch, Dr. Maria Frankrek, and the French studies students, Jeanne Davet from the Afrikaans translations, Dr. Zoliswa Mate from Xhosa translations. Also, a very big thank you to Professor Alden Mutabai from the University of Dar es Salaam for the Iswahili translations. Thank you so much. That I think Nikki spoke about that and the impact of that. Thank you so much for spreading it as far as there. Also, special thanks to Professor Maria Kraus and Nadera Mando. Also, big thanks to Professor Louise Strauch from the Faculty of Health Sciences. Thank you so much to Dr. Dedre Gedult from the Faculty of Education. And then lastly, obviously but not least, thank you to Dr. Pumeza Kotanyati from the Mthonjeni Wellness Center at the University, Belinda Moreau, and also Rio Vidan. And that finalizes our list of thank yous. Thank you so much to those that have been listening via social media to the webinar. Thank you for being part of this conversation. And I hope that you will go back to your homes and apply all the knowledge gained to your own life, because a little fire started somewhere will eventually spark something big. So now I'm going to hand over to the LNMU team to try and play us this much anticipated virus fighter video. We've been waiting and we can't wait to see it. For myself, thank you so much.
Oscar Mandela, let's save lives. Let's keep our distance, no Wi-Fi. Wash your hands, stay at home. Cover up before you go. Step 1, stay at home. Mask up Mandela. Step 2, wash your hands. Mask up Mandela. Step 3, wear a mask. Mask up Mandela. We're all in this together. Mask up Mandela. Muscat Mandela, let's save lives. Let's keep our distance, no high fives. Wash your hands, stay at home. Cover up before you go. Step 1, stay at home. Muscat Mandela. Step 2, wash your hands. Muscat Mandela. Step 3, wear a mask. Muscat Mandela. We're all in this together. Muscat Mandela. Thank you.